You are listening to Wordslinger Podcast episode 103, Swapping Author Stories with Hank Garner. This episode of the Wordslinger Podcast is brought to you by the audiobook edition of Quelo Medallion. You can find Quelo Medallion on Audible and use your Audible credit, or get Quelo Medallion for free when you go to audibletrial.com/wordslinger.
It's the Wordslinger Podcast, where story matters. Build your brand, write your book, redefine who you are. It's all about the story here. What's yours? Now, here's the guy who invented pants optional, Kevin Tomlinson, the Wordslinger.
Wordslinger.
Hey everybody, it is me, Kevin Tomlinson, your friendly neighborhood wordslinger, and I am happy to be back. Happy New Year to you. You may have noticed there was we'll say a slight gap between last episode and this episode, and that is because of the holidays. And so I hope sincerely that you had a very Merry Christmas and a very Happy New Year. I hope you got everything you wanted for Christmas. I hope you were blessed, and I hope you stayed healthy and happy through the whole thing. My wife and I, we enjoyed spending time with family. We did a little bit of traveling, not a ton, but we actually had the family over to the RV for a brief time for Christmas Eve, and that was interesting. I mean, it's a lot of people to pack into one RV, but and unfortunately, it was warm and icky outside. It was all humid and nearly 80 degrees outside on Christmas Eve, so it wasn't really a comfortable day. It wasn't a cozy day the way you want it to be on Christmas. So that's too bad, but we enjoyed having everybody over, and then what we did was a tour. We started here at the RV, then we went to my father-in-law's home, and then my brother-in-law's home, and at each stop, there was a different portion of the experience. So we had like appetizers and drinks here. We went to my father-in-law's place where my mother-in-law had pulled together dinner for us. Very lovely dinner, where we also opened stockings. That's something we do on Christmas Eve in this family. And then we went to my brother-in-law's place where we opened gifts and had dessert and that sort of thing. So it was cool. It's the first time we've done it that way. We have traditions in this family, Christmas traditions that are time honored by now. And one of those is to make candy. Usually a couple of weeks before Christmas. This time around, it was very nearly on Christmas, just because of the timing. It was tough to get everybody in one place. Kara and I were in Oklahoma City about a week or so before Christmas, where the temperatures dropped to a very chilly 5 degrees the morning we left. Now, I know, I've heard this from everybody. There are folks out there who are suffering through like negative 25 or something along those lines, and I'm very sorry you have to do that. That's ridiculous. Move. I'm sorry, just pack your stuff and move. Anyway, so this week, we are talking to somebody. I'm really excited about this interview. I was excited about this interview the day of. Now, this is as I mentioned in the front end of the interview, is a landmark episode, because this was the first interview. This will be the first episode, actually, constructed entirely, 100%, from an interview and the rapper, all created in the RV. So there you go. A Wordslinger landmark episode, everyone. This was actually, I recorded this interview prior to having a decent internet solution, so I'm actually surprised at how well it turned out, but very happy with it. I'm talking with Hank Garner, and he's the author of Writer's Block, and he's the host of the Author Stories podcast. I was on the Author Stories podcast. I'm rehashing everything I say in the front end of this interview. You'll listen and you'll enjoy. I know you will. Hank is a great guy. We've connected on Facebook. We've been kind of kicking some conversation back and forth. He's a fantastic guy. We're a lot alike. Like a lot of folks that I end up interviewing on the show, he and I share a lot of traits. Now, he has a podcast. That podcast of his, he's got just a gorgeous list of past guests, some famous authors that you will have heard of. So I highly recommend going and checking it out. Now, I was on that show, and I don't count myself among those greats per se, but I was thrilled to be on the show. So now I'm going to get to that interview in just a second. One thing I wanted to talk about real quick. Recently, I launched a new website called, the URL is theportable.life. And this is right now it's a blog primarily, but it's going to be a hub of all the things that I encounter while I'm traveling, while I'm looking for solutions to problems such as internet, that sort of thing, internet access, that sort of thing, in the RV, but also just, my whole career has been very portable. And I think that there are a lot of people out there that are struggling to have a portable career and a portable life. Whether you're interested in RV life at all, there's a lot out there that I think is very useful to people who want to be freelancers, who want to write full time, who want to be artistic professionals, professional artists, I guess would be a better way to phrase that. So what I decided is I'm going to start pulling all these things together and updating a regular blog about stuff like this. My wife is also going to contribute, and we'll have categories that we write in. I'm also going to take some outside submissions. I've got a couple of people in mind. I'm tapping on the shoulder and asking if they'd like to contribute, and I've got a whole contribution submission guideline page on the site. So check out theportable.life. And that is the URL. The .life is the domain, so check that out. And first, let me know what you think of the site. I build all my own sites. It's just a thing I do. I use CreateSpace. It makes it easy. No, I'm sorry. I use Squarespace, and that makes it easy. I do use CreateSpace, and that does make some things easy, but two different services. But aside from just letting me know what you think of the site, go in and read some of the content that's there already. There's only like 3 or 4 blog posts so far, and there will be more. But let me know the sorts of things you'd like to see covered by that site. Read the mission statement there and see if that sparks any ideas. And there's going to be content in the form of, this podcast is part of the content of that site, by the way. Wordslinger podcast. The non-fiction books that I write will find a home on that site, so you can pick up a copy of 30 Day Author there, for example. You can also pick up a copy of Nick Thacker's Home, which is all about creating a platform for yourself as an author online. And there are some other resources and tools coming. You can also book me for appearances and that sort of thing through that site. That'll be an option. So there's a lot you can do there now, and there's only going to be more as we go. And I want to build this as a resource that's really useful to people who are looking to get out and start their own portable life. So happy to hear feedback. So go check that out. That is theportable.life. Don't forget the article there, theportable.life. So I appreciate you, checking it out and let me know what you think. Now, I'm not going to delay this any further because my good friend Hank Garner is just itching to talk to you, and he's got some cool stuff to tell you too. So check out this interview. I hope you'll also pick up Hank's book, Writer's Block, which has been an interesting read. I think you'll enjoy it. And definitely check out his podcast, Author Stories Podcast. Look for my episode. That's a good jumping on point. So, all right. And we'll see you after the interview. Hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Now, this is a landmark interview because this is the very first interview that I've actually conducted while in the RV. So I'm actually talking to Hank Garner. He's the author of Writer's Block. Also a host of the Author Stories podcast. You should check out both. I was actually interviewed on his show, the Author Stories podcast. Do you remember what episode that was, Hank?
That was episode 137.
Holy cow, you knew. Holy cow.
Yeah.
Seriously, I do not ever remember any given episode that I'm for anybody. So. I know that I have a 100 coming up, which by the time this airs will have already played through, and I interviewed David Brin for that.
Oh, nice.
That's probably the only
Nice.
one I'll ever remember from now on.
100 is a great feeling.
Yeah, it is, man. We're there. Well, and you already passed that landmark, obviously. How did you celebrate your 100?
Well, you put me on the spot because
That's
now
what we
I
do
can't
here.
remember. Now I can't remember who number 100 was. Crap. We had a fantastic show for 100. Is what we did. We just bring quality content every week.
Yeah.
So 100 was just as good as 20.
Yeah. There you go.
How's that?
That's a nice way to side your way out of that. So,
That's right.
moving on, so we don't put the guest on the spot. So, how's everything going, man? I've been, of course, listening to ever since I was on your show. Of course, I become fans of shows once I'm on the show, so I go back and start listening.
Yeah, me too.
That's just the way it is. You need your introduction, but
yeah.
So how's the podcast going?
The podcast is going phenomenally. It's been just over 2 years now that I've been doing it, and it really just began as a labor of love, as a way for me to connect with other writers and to kind of build a sense of community, and really for me just to get to learn from people and to they say that whatever you want to do in life, surround yourself with those sorts of people, and so that's what I did. Albeit virtually, but each week I would sit down with someone that I greatly respected and that I wanted to learn something from, and I would just kind of be the student, and I would ask the kind of questions that I never heard anybody else ask.
Right.
So that's what I did, and 2 years later, it's going really strong. I've had some amazing guests on, some people that I really had on a wish list from the beginning, and have just steadily ticked off, a bunch of those names, and just really enjoying it more than anything.
Yeah, I saw your list, and you have some really impressive guests. You make me feel a little inadequate, Hank. I'm going to be honest with you.
Kevin, it is nothing more than tenacity.
Right.
I just don't give up easily, and that's all it is. There's nothing more than just reaching out to people and collecting those rejections. Podcasters are a lot like authors, that look for that traditional deal, and
right.
Kind of the badge of honor is collecting those rejection slips. Well, podcasting is very much like that,
right.
and you just keep honing your craft, and you just keep working at it and working at it and working at it until one day, people say, "Oh, okay, I'll give you a shot," and
Well, what's
that's really
interesting is the guests on my show. I like finding these sort of unknowns and bringing them out, and because this story, it's all about story. This show's all about story, the behind the scenes story, right? But what's been interesting is that the more I do this, the easier it becomes to get those big name guests, and now they're starting to come talk to me. Like suddenly I'm being sought out by agents and well, not agents, but like publicists and that sort of thing. Are you experiencing that as well?
Absolutely. I actually have a publicist at HarperCollins who has just kind of befriended me over email, and she will email me once or twice a month and say, "Hey, I've got an author that has this project coming out. Would you like to have her on the show or something like that?" And yeah, those what I really think it is, Kevin, is that when you set out to do good things for other people, that shows, and people then reciprocate that.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's a good philosophy to live by, I think. Because if you're concentrating on a philosophy like that, and your expectation is that other people are like that, then you will likely behave accordingly, right?
Sure.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So, okay, so we've covered podcasting a little. What I wanted to ask you, who's been your favorite guest on the show?
Oh man,
me,
there's
right?
been well, I mean, we're just going to take you off the table because it's not fair.
Right,
it's just not fair.
that's not fair to anyone else. All right, go ahead. Next favorite.
I've had several folks that have been return guests. I have to say, I have different people for different reasons. Michael Bunker was the first interview that I ever did, and I know you had him on your show last week from when we're recording this. It's just a phenomenal guy, and it's become a friend of mine, and he's been on the show several times, and I appreciate his friendship, and he always brings something cool and new to the conversation.
Right.
As far as people that I don't really know, and I'm air quoting no, I'm going to say Craig Johnson, the guy that writes the Longmire Mysteries series. He came on the show for a second time a couple of weeks ago, and he was one of the most engaging interviews that I've ever done. The first show and then the second show also. But I just learned so much from talking to him, and learned a lot about storycraft and about writing with place, and really letting the setting and the place where the story takes happens, bringing that as part of the character, and I learned a lot from him there, and so that's probably my favorite.
Okay, yeah, that's I'm gonna go back and find that interview now. I haven't gotten through your whole catalog yet.
It'll take you a little bit.
It takes a little while, yeah.
Yeah, I'm before we started talking, I was editing up episode 139 and about to put it out in a few minutes. So,
nice.
Yeah, there's a bunch in there.
Yeah. All right. So far, let's just tally this up. You've had more famous guests than I have, and you have more episodes in the can than I have. This is all noted. All right. Moving on. So you're an author. How long have you been writing?
I have been. I published my first novel in January 2014, or I think March of 2014.
Okay.
So publishing for almost 3 years. Before that, though, I wrote for quite a long time. I've written for my local newspaper. Had a couple of fairly successful blogs throughout the years. Just always had been writing stuff. I even wrote a couple of stage plays when I was like college age, and they were horrible. And it was just always something I've kind of dabbled in. But I really got serious about it almost 3 years ago.
Yeah. You and I have very parallel lives.
Publishing 3 years ago.
Yeah, you're like slightly ahead of me. That's just about the only difference, I think. And I have more hair.
All of mine is on the front of my head, on my face. The rest of it is, it's elsewhere.
Yeah. So, no, that's cool. I've dabbled in all that as well. I mean, I wrote for newspapers for years. I wrote for television and doing documentary work and that sort of thing. And writing was always the through line of my career. I tell everyone that. So it's interesting, though, that what sort of prompted you to shift from other forms of writing to writing books?
I had always kind of threatened to write a novel, and had always had ideas bouncing around. My wife and I have a big family. We have 5 kids, and there's just a lot of busyness, for the last 20 years or so. A few years ago, our kids have gotten bigger. Our youngest is now 12 and a half. So we finally got to the point in our lives where there wasn't so much hands-on 24/7, and we kind of got a chance to breathe a little bit. And so my wife and I would take walks in the afternoon, or we have this swing in our yard where we would go and just have some adult conversation time, and we would just sit and talk. And one day I told her, I said, I had this idea for a story, and this was nothing new. This happened kind of all the time, but I just told her about it, and she said, "You really need to write that." And I said, "Well, I don't really know. Okay, I'll try." And I just opened up a Word document that night, and I kind of wrote out this first scene.
Yeah.
And then that scene, in the act of writing that scene, birthed the next scene and the next and the next, and all of a sudden these couple of characters that I'd been walking around with in my head for a few days, all of a sudden they were alive.
Yeah.
And so I just started writing and writing, and every night I would come home from work, and we would have family time and cook supper and all this kind of stuff, and afterwards I would just kind of sit down at the computer and I would write out a scene, and kind of before you knew it, I had a book. And so then the natural progression from there is, okay, what do I do with this book? And so you start Googling around, and of course you see all of the sites about submitting to agents and all of that, but there was also there were just as many articles and sites about you can do this on your own now, this whole indie thing. And of course you find folks like Hugh Howey, who was really blogging a ton at that time, and I think he was kind of in the middle of his Sand serial. I think it was around that time. And he was, just live blogging about the process all the time. And I was like, man, this sounds like something I could actually do. And, there are a lot of other folks also, Conrath and a lot of those people. But it just kind of, I for the first time, I said, okay, I have a book, and now I actually think I know what to do with it. Yeah. And so I published it, and then you start kind of making friends, and it just kind of grows from there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of interesting because it almost takes no effort to sort of flow into the community,
right,
and become a part of it. So it's a very welcoming community, we'll say.
It is.
So tell me a little about process here. Like, what's your typical novel writing process?
My process has changed a little bit in the last over the last couple of years. I now work from home full time, podcasting, writing, and doing some other freelance work. So my time allocation is a little different. But I try to. I would like to say I'm one of those people that sits down religiously and writes every single day. That's not exactly the truth, because you. Stuff happens, and especially if you're self-employed, you think, oh my God, I'm going to have all the time in the world now, and it doesn't work that way.
It's kind of the opposite.
It's absolutely kind of the opposite. But I will say this: I think every day I'm thinking about the story, and I'm writing in my mind, if not on paper. Yeah. And so that when I do sit down at the keyboard, the story flows. So I'm always thinking about story. I'm always thinking, and I've usually got 2 or 3 projects going at a time, whether it's a short story for an anthology or a novel I'm working on or something like that. Yeah. But I use Scrivener. If we want to just get down to brass tacks, and I keep a file of ideas. Because like most writers, ideas just hit you upside the head all the time, and there'll be just a little nugget or a little kernel of an idea there, and I'll just write down a couple of sentences or something in my idea file. Right. And then from time to time, I'll go back and look over those and see if something jumps out at me. But when I have an idea that's feels like there's something there, I'll create a new Scrivener file, and I'll create several folders for chapters, and then inside those folders, I'll create several text files for scenes. And I'll just kind of start working on the beginning of the book, and then usually once I have a beginning, I understand where the story is going from there. So I'll go through and those chapters, I'll kind of name those chapter folders with a short description or just a sentence or so that triggers in my mind where the story is going from there, and I just kind of set road signs along the way. And then I usually have a really good idea of the ending, of the final ending. But a lot of times I don't know how I'm going to get there, and so I'll just start kind of placing those signs along the way, and that becomes sort of a loose outline that I'll work from, and it's a living outline that changes as I go. But yeah, and that usually the first couple of weeks that I'm working on a novel kind of lays out that way, and then I just go in and I start filling out those scenes inside there until we kind of put flesh on the skeleton, as it were.
Yeah, that's Well, I mean, and you're saying you don't write every day, but I mean, how frequently do you write?
Oh, I would like to say most every day. Out of
all right.
a 7-day week, I'm going to sit down and write 4 to 5 days out of that week.
And how do you gauge your progress? Are you a word count guy or just a time button seat kind of guy or what?
I love to get 2,000 words a day.
Okay.
Some days I don't hit that. Some days, if I'm just really busy with, doing some audio production or different things like that, I may get 500 words.
Yeah.
Some days, if my schedule is kind of clear, I might get 3,000 to 4,000 words. But on an average week, I'd like to get 8 to 10 words a week.
Yeah, that's doable.
Yeah.
And you brought up Scrivener, so we'll talk. I'm going to talk about that a little because I actually credit Scrivener with sort of breaking me out of the sort of dead end loop I was in with my writing, and I no longer use it. I use Ulysses now, very similar, but I made a switch for various reasons, but I still have a soft spot in my heart for Scrivener. So I don't know what your experience was, but what brought you to Scrivener?
When I was finishing my first novel, it's called Bloom, and I discovered NaNoWriMo at I guess that would have been the 2013 NaNoWriMo, and that was while I was working on the book. So I used that as kind of my motivation to push through to the end of my book. And I finished it. And at the end, if you've ever done NaNoWriMo, there are prizes that different sponsors give. And one of the prizes that year was a half off coupon for Scrivener. Yeah. And I'd never even heard of Scrivener, but it was for the PC, which I use, it was only $40. Right. And then half off of that was $20. And I was like, I'll invest $20 if I never use it again. It's just to see what it'll do for me. Right. And I did, and I've kind of used it ever since. So I had already finished that first book before I even discovered Scrivener, but I then imported it in there, and I really I didn't understand a lot of the features for quite a while. Right. But it let me play with it, and then my second novel, Mulligan, I actually began that in Scrivener, and that's where I kind of developed that process of the chapters and using those as my outline. Right. And before I really started that book, I had a full outline to work from. And I am not an outline person. Like, that kind of terrifies me a little bit because I just that was one of the worst parts of English in school. I just couldn't. I just couldn't focus that far down the road. It eluded me and was just very intimidating to me. But to me, the interface and the easy way of doing that really just set me at ease and kind of empowered me to look at writing in a different way.
Yeah, that's a very similar story. Yeah.
Yeah.
Once again.
And then a couple months ago, they released the iPad version.
Right.
And that has been a game changer for me.
I tell you, that was my
really
biggest
great
reason for switching was it took so long for them to come out with the mobile version, and I was starting to use my iPad for writing quite a bit at that time. Because it's small, it battery power wise, it lasts forever, and it's got built-in LTE and everything. So very handy writing tool, but I couldn't write in Scrivener, and it was driving me nuts. So.
But yesterday we went on a road trip. It was like we were in the car for 9 hours. And I took my iPad and I had my little Bluetooth keyboard, and I did some writing in the car while my wife drove. It's phenomenal.
Yeah, that's very cool. Yeah, that I don't have anything against Scrivener at all now, especially now that they have the mobile version. Very proud of it.
When Scrivener is just a tool, whatever tool works for you, I say use it. If someone else prefers Word and that's the environment they're comfortable in, man, knock yourself out. It's just a tool. Just find the tool that fits the job and use it. Right.
So let's talk about writer's block, and not the the fear-inducing writer's block, but
not the condition.
So your novel writer's block. What's the gist of the story there?
It's a crazy thing. It began as a short story. I was going through that Scrivener file that I was talking about where I have ideas.
Yeah.
And I came across this one sentence. Maybe it's two sentences. I don't remember. But it said, if you had a typewriter and everything you typed came true, what would you do with it? And I have no idea where that idea came from. I don't even remember writing it in there, but it was in there.
Right.
And I came across it one day and I was like, oh, that's provocative. I wonder what that's about. And I just kind of walked around for a few days with that sentence kind of rattling around in my head. And I got the idea of a novelist who was very accomplished and famous, and he had 2 books of a trilogy finished, and the 3rd book was due, and he was completely stuck and had no idea what to do, could not finish the book, and just had crippling writer's block.
Right.
And as he was pacing around in his office one day, he kind of absent-mindedly laid his hand on this old IBM Selectric typewriter that he had picked up at a yard sale, and decided that he would load a piece of paper in the typewriter and just type nonsense. Because he read somewhere one time to change your process to see if that'll help writer's block. So he loads up a sheet of paper. He turns on the typewriter, puts his fingers on the home row keys, and that guttural vibration emanates through his hands and up his arms, and it's just he's sort of empowered by this old feeling, and he just types a nonsense story, just complete nonsense about a local bar that has a bear that comes in and picks a fight with one of the patrons, and the guy kills the bear, and that's the end of the story. And he kind of laughs about it, and it's just complete nonsense until the next morning. He goes out to get his newspaper, and on the front page of the paper is a story about a bear that came into a bar, and the patrons killed it. And there's a picture of the guy, his foot on this bear sprawled out on the floor of the bar, and he just completely loses it. And he realizes that this thing that he's picked up has some sort of ethereal connection to something else, and so you start realizing that there's more to the protagonist, Stu Weber, than immediately meets the eye. And the reason he has writer's block, and he's got some demons that he's fighting, and there's some ghosts from the past, and things like this. And the magic typewriter, although it can solve certain problems in life, some of the most important things have to be dealt with in other ways. Yeah. And so I wrote up the story. It took me a couple days to write it, and kind of sent it to a couple of friends, and they were like, "Man, this is really something special." And so I published it, and a lot of people loved it. But I started getting all this mail about, well, what happens next to Stu. And I was like, I don't know. It's just a short story, And I on purpose left the ending kind of wide open, because I like stories like that don't completely resolve at the end. It kind of leaves you to kind of carry on with the characters for a while when the book is done. Right. So I kind of on purpose intentionally left it open, but people kept asking, well, what happens next? Does he solve this thing? Does it come to any sort of conclusion? I was like, well, I have no idea. So I sat down and I just kind of asked Stu what happened next, and then 4 other parts came out, and I published them serially, piece by piece, and it was one of the most fun experiences to do it that way, because I was getting feedback from readers as the episodes came out, and by the time I got to the 5th part, it was kind of this fever pitch, about, oh my God, what, how are you going to bring this about? And I like to think that the 5th part completely took people by surprise, and and after that I packaged all 5 pieces, up together as an omnibus, and put it out, and that's Writer's Block. It's one of the most personal stories for me that I've ever written, and if you read it, you'll kind of understand what I'm talking about. But there's little pieces of me and some pieces of some people I know, and some heartbreak and some resolution and some redemption, and it's a story like that.
Yeah, that's it's interesting. I bought it while you were talking, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
Because how could I pass that up, actually? And I'm curious now, because you kind of, during the telling of this, you kind of revealed some of your process for maybe not dealing with writer's block, but at least continuing the story once you thought it was already over. Do you deal with writer's block at all?
Not really. I think writer's block is, and like Stu deals with in the story, I think it's more about figuring out what is going on with you.
Yeah.
And that's, we create our own writer's block. I'll just kind of put it that way. Usually the roadblocks we run into are ones that we place there. So the act of writing is a cathartic experience a lot of times, and sometimes just the getting there and writing ourselves out of the situation is kind of the cure for it. So no, but I do understand some of the fear and the trepidation that comes because it is you are laying your soul bare and then asking other people to take part in it and critique it and things like that. It can be pretty daunting.
Yeah, it is, and I don't personally ever experience writer's block, but then when people ask me about it, I never know how to answer them.
Yeah, it really is a weird thing, because if someone says they sit down at the keyboard every day and they just never have any hesitation, or they don't understand how a story is going to resolve, I think they're lying. And planning out ahead of time sure does help those things, but you still have to get in there and write the flesh onto the skeleton, and sometimes that's a lot of work, but it's just resolving to do the work.
Yeah. I think, and actually, I think that's the key. Yeah, that's ultimately kind of the advice I give people is, it's just commit yourself to actually doing it, because it's that same idea of, a plumber never has to wait for the muse. It's the same idea. Like you don't ever get plumber's block. Not that way, anyway.
Love it. Yeah.
But anyway.
Well, and like Stu does, he sits down at the typewriter and he just types something nonsense to shift his brain out of gear. Right. And I'll do that sometimes. Sometimes I'll say, you know what, I'm going to write 500 words, and I may completely throw these 500 words away in a minute. Right. But it'll trigger something, and I'll shift out of this gear into something else. And 9 times out of 10, the words that I get written, I keep, and I may repurpose them a little bit, but I rarely have a time where I just think, oh, that's crap, that's going out the window.
I know I've read this advice somewhere, and I cannot remember who said it or exactly what they said. So we're going to improvise here, but in a time where you don't know what to write next, introduce something insane to the scene, like introduce a talking rabbit, or whatever fits your genre, really, but introduce something, and then watch the characters react to it.
yeah
And then I'll
or even introduce something insane that doesn't fit the genre, and then figure out how to make it fit the genre.
Yeah, there you go too. Yeah, that's cool. All right. Okay. Well, unfortunately, we just hit the 30-minute mark, and I want to respect your time, so we're gonna go ahead and wrap up. But I've really enjoyed talking to you, man. This is the second time you and I have had a chance to chat, and I've enjoyed it both times. So we're gonna have to make sure we do this more often.
Absolutely. I really enjoyed it, Kevin. Thanks for having me on.
You got it. Everybody listening, you can stick around. You're probably hearing the music right now, right? I know I am. And I'll wrap up the show with something probably pretty pertinent and cool. So, Hank, thanks for being on, man. And everyone else, stick around.
Thanks, Kevin.
And that was my interview with Hank. I dig Hank. I like him a lot. I have a good relationship with almost everyone I've ever met named Hank, by the way. It's just a cool name. It is a cool name, by the way. Hank is one of those names that you're like, that's your buddy, that's your pal. That's somebody you can trust and depend on. Hank. Anyway, so I hope you enjoyed that interview with Hank Garner. I'm a listener. I'm a reader. I'm a connector on Facebook. I'm a big fan. So, and it's good to find people who are just genuine and authentic and out there looking to make the right connections and then help people with those connections. That's sort of one of the missions of Wordslinger podcast and my life in general. And so it's really good to meet like minds for that. So that was Hank Garner, and be sure to check him out. You can get online. You can visit his website at hankgarner.com. You can find him on Facebook. You can find him on Twitter. You'll find links to all this in the show notes, obviously. And I'm happy to answer questions if you want to email or call me. Speaking of emailing and calling me, you can actually do that. It's so easy. If you will go to wordslingerpodcast.com, and frankly, I'm doing that exactly at this moment because I want to see a couple of things too. But if you'll go to wordslingerpodcast.com, one of the things you'll discover right away is that you can click on the contact button and you can send me an email about anything show related, anything that has anything to do with anything, anytime, anywhere, anything. As many times as I can repeat it. But you can also call me. You can call me at 281-809-WORD. That's 281-809-9673. And from that magical number, you can leave me a voicemail. Ask me a question. Ask me anything you like. If I don't know the answer, I'm pretty good with Google. Or I may know someone who knows the answer. And I'm happy to pass along questions, comments, kudos, anything you want to say to a former guest of mine. Happy to do that. You can also leave a voicemail from the send voicemail button, which happens to be hovering on the right hand side of the page on wordslingerpodcast.com. If you click on any given photo on that page, it'll take you somewhere. But all my guests are on there, including archives all the way back to September 2014. So if you have not caught up on the show, do so. You can do that. You can listen in on everything. You can hear all my ad reads over the years, including Robo Reader, who has been slightly retired. It's kind of too bad. I actually liked Robo Reader for some of the ad reads. I may bring him back. But you can in the past couple of weeks, you can see the interview I did with David Brin, who is an amazing author, Hugo Award-winning author. You can scroll back and see what the conversation was with Michael Bunker and Honoré Corder and a few others. I'm just kind of glancing down the list here, but there's some amazing artists on this page, so lots of wisdom to learn from, and I hope you will. Now, this show, of course, is always sort of unofficially brought to you by Draft 2 Digital. And if you go to draft2digital.com, if you are an author and you're looking to expand your distribution beyond simply Amazon.com and their KDP program, you can go to Draft 2 Digital and hook up with a whole bunch of ebook retailers out there, and that will allow you to not only distribute your work, but we do a really cool, really clean conversion of your manuscript so that you can go from like a Word document, say, to a beautiful EPUB that will work on every device out there. No hassles, no fuss, no muss. So that service, by the way, absolutely free. If you distribute through Draft Digital, you'll pay a 15% royalty cut, but hey, we make things convenient. We're a time saver is what we are. Plus, there are a whole bunch of other services you might enjoy, including universal book links, which are brought to you on books2read.com. Now, this is cool. This is cool. If you want to see them in action, go to kevintomlinson.com/books. Every single link on that page, to a book at least, is a universal book link. And what's cool about this is you can create a link, one link, and give it to all of your readers, anyone on your mailing list, anyone on your social media, pages, that sort of thing. Put it in your blog posts, whatever. Put it on ads, and potential readers will click that one link, and it'll allow them to go and buy your book from any given ebook retailer online. All of them. They search them all, and you can include your affiliate links in those. If you register, you'll have to register for that. You can do this without registering. It's absolutely free either way. But if you register, you get that as a benefit. You also get custom URLs as a benefit. You get data as a benefit. So lots of reasons to sign up. So go do that. Now, of course, they're the unofficial sponsor because I am the official director of marketing for Drafted Digital. And if you got questions about the service, hit me up. I'm also available. I do a lot of podcasts on that topic and on my own work and on the RV lifestyle. So if you're looking for somebody to be a guest on your show, for example, or you have a book you're writing or whatever, talk to me. So anyway, that's all the self-promotion and everything. So if you'd like to support this show, you can do so. Go to wordslingerpodcast.com and click on the Patreon button. That's a way to financially support the show, but a way to support the show without a dime coming out of your pocket is to go on iTunes, search for Wordslinger Podcast, and rate and leave a review of the show. And that would be amazing, and I really appreciate that. That helps me to be discovered by other listeners out there who might find Wordslinger Podcast to be kind of useful in their lives, and that's the goal. We're here to change lives. I mean, that's the cool thing about story. Everybody's story has the potential to change someone's life. Isn't that amazing? I mean, it just floors me every time I think about it. So, anyway, I hope you're having a fantastic 2017 so far. My prayer for you is just complete and absolute success in whatever it is that you're doing. I hope you're doing work you're passionate about, but even more important, I hope you're doing work that leaves an impression on the universe, that does something good for the people in your life and the people who haven't come into your life yet. I hope that for you. And God bless you. I hope you have a wonderful weekend ahead if you happen to be listening on Friday. And take care of yourselves out there, and I will see you next time.
Wordslinger.